selling and installing IP surveillance systems is nothing like the HD over coax days. Back in those days, if we had an issue, we knew it was either the server, the cameras, the power supply, or the cables. It was simple. The world of IP surveillance is certainly better in every way, but it's way more complicated. Often I feel like an explorer in the 1600s reconnoitering the globe in order to fill in the blank edges of the map. The difference is when you're selling technology, is that globe is ever expanding. What we can do in this video series, and as a company, at Digital Watchdog, is give you the map, give you the major continents, give you some landmarks to get you on your journey. And I can promise you that we'll be back with more videos like this to help you along the way. That's what we're going to do today in Rapid Review. Should we get started? All right. Digital Watchdog's Rapid Review tutorial series. My name's Scott Cappelletti. Today, we're going to hand you over that map. Now, this is going to be one of two things. What we hope it is best practices that you use on every single installation. If you haven't, then it's certainly a list of things that you should do before you call tech support. There's going to be a hyperlink to this document and other documents as well that you can go to, but I ask you all to please save that document. Make these your best practices and use this at every job site, because I can tell you, these are the major landmarks, the major things that you have to look out for to make sure your installations run smooth, to make sure everything runs as advertised. When we give you a presentation and show you the Spectrum software and what it can do and what these blackjack servers can do, it's because we're following these that we get that kind of reaction from our systems. So take this, save it, but let's go through these step by step. We'll get it done pretty quickly. And let's show you all the little things that you can do before you call tech support and or as best practices on every single job site. First thing you want to do, as silly as it sounds, is make sure everything's up to date. I'm talking about the camera's firmware. I'm talking about Spectrum. Everything needs to be checked to make sure it's up to date. In case you're saying, why should I have to update a brand new system? Because it might have sat in our warehouse for some time. Then it might have sat in your distributor's warehouse for some time. Before you know it, you get a brand new product that you just ordered, and it's already 6 months old. Digital Watchdog is always giving you free updates. It's what we do on the camera side and, of course, with Spectrum. So please make sure everything's up to date. There's other videos in Rapid Review that'll take you through the best practices and best way to update it, and also the links that are provided below that take you to how to set up a blackjack server correctly will show you how to do this. But first and foremost, before you call tech support, before you leave that job site, make sure everything is up to date, your cameras and your Spectrum software as well. Next item. Is the PoE switch that you're using a Gigabit PoE switch? Now, here's why I'm having you check. There's a lot of false advertising out there. A lot of switches will be advertised as Gigabit, but it's really only the little feeder ports on the side, the link ports on the side. We want to make sure every single port is Gigabit. Now listen, I hear you. Do our cameras even put out, does anybody's cameras even put out close to a Gigabit? No. But a 10100 in some cases is not enough. If it's Gigabit on every single port, you have more than enough room to ensure a smooth installation, and again, that everything's going to run as advertised. This is a limitation not of Digital Watchdog, but of the industry in the IP world. Are all your wire runs 330 feet or less? That's just the standard. So you got to measure out your wire runs, use your test kits, whatever the case may be. If you have a run that's more than 330 feet, there are plenty of products out there, including Digital Watchdog's brand new PoE extender, that'll give you more than 330 feet without even having power right there at that point. If I was you, I'd cut it short around 250, add that PoE extender to the mix and get another 300 feet. But anything over 330 feet, your data and your power is going to start to drop off. You're going to see missing packets. Spectrum's going to give you all sorts of warnings. So please be careful about that. Double check to make sure that none of your wire runs are over 330 feet. All of our servers, the Blackjack series servers by Digital Watchdog, have 2 network cards. We need to use both of them. Now, I know there's a lot of very smart people watching this video right now that talk about VLANs and all the magic they can do. I'm here to tell you from a digital watchdog perspective, a best practice is you got to separate the traffic. One of those network cards, you can see right on the screen there's two little Ethernet jacks. One of them just goes to the PoE switch with the cameras. No internet on that PoE switch at all. The other one goes to the internet. Of course, you're going to have either Linux or Windows 10 LTSC on our Blackjack servers. So you will be able to go in there and program them if you need to static IPs, which is strongly recommended. But I can promise you that if we're using one of those network cards, you're going to have a whole bunch of issues, a litany of issues. Separating them out of the gate is 100% a best practice. And one of the things tech support's going to check either way. You might as well do it before you call tech support. You might as well do it before you leave the job site, because I promise you, it's an investment that will yield dividends in the way of not having to go back to a job site and play around with the system and figure out why you're losing packets, why it's not as smooth as it should be. Separate the traffic. Use both the network ports and the back of the Blackjacks. Does everything have a static IP address? So on the camera side, strongly recommended that you go into Windows, if it's Linux, go into Linux, and go into that specific one. After you've set up all your camera's IP addresses, given your camera's passwords, again, follow that setting up a Blackjack server checklist that we provided to you. But once that's done, once you get to this step, strongly recommended that we give the server a static IP address as well. We want to lock down all the cameras to a static IP address, and we want to lock down the server. Is it possible that we can use DHCP? Sure. But again, as far as best practices, you want things to run smooth. You don't want to have to come back to a job site. This is one of those big tips that tech support's going to check for if you call them anyway. Taking the time it takes less time. You might as well do it in advance. Give everything a static IP address if it needs it on the camera side. On the internet side, not important. You can leave it on obtain automatically, or you can set it if you need to. But on the camera side, very important step. Now this seems like an eye roller, and it is a simple one, but I can't tell you how often it's true. Sometimes we just have to reboot things. Now, Blackjack servers are set to automatically reboot once a month. But if you're having issues, give it a reboot. Even the cameras, power down the cameras, power them back up. Everything that is a computer, everything that's a technology, pretty much, not everything, but almost everything has a cache. It's got a memory on the inside. When you reboot things, it dumps that cache temporarily. Again, Spectrum automatically does this for you. But I highly recommend just to cross it off your list, every now and then, give it a reboot, whether it's a camera or a Blackjack server, and see if that eliminates your issue. This is a big one. Are we using the server as a client? Anybody that's bought a Blackjack server knows that the back has an HDMI out. Now, on the record, that is for setup purposes only. Because in reality, what happens is we're using the CPU and the RAM to take all this video in and to break it down, record it, and store it onto our hard drives. When you start displaying video off of your actual server itself, you're using more CPU. Now, can you? Sure. I recommend personally, if you're going to use it as a client, then you're using our calculator. If our calculator tells you need an i3 processor for your job, then you should go with an i5 or an i7 if you want to use it as a client. It really comes down to the CPU and the RAM. If they're, with all the cameras on your screen, below 70%, that's fine. At peak times, 3:30, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, when everyone leaves, take a look at the CPU with the cameras on the screen, see where it's at. If we're touching 70% or below, you'll be okay. If you're in the 90s, you're going to start to see things happen, and the machine will reboot. Any PC is going to reboot when the CPU gets too high. So as a general rule, Spectrum is free. Don't use the server as a client. Download Spectrum to anybody's computer that you want to. If you need to, you got to monitor that CPU and that RAM to make sure you can handle it. If not, you're going to have issues. Is your PoE switch managed or unmanaged? It truly doesn't matter. I mean, I prefer unmanaged because it's easier. But what does that mean? Some PoE switches that are unmanaged, you plug the cameras into it, you're getting 100% of the bandwidth and the power that it can give out to that camera. A managed switch, beyond doing a litany of other things, a managed switch, you can program how much power goes out to that camera, and you can program how much data you're allowing through that port. So if you are using a managed switch, a programmable switch, that's fine. As a best practice, give us everything. Don't even do that auto option in that router's webpage. Go to maximum on any digital Watchdog camera. Give it everything that it possibly can to avoid any issues. If one of our cameras comes with a PoE injector, it's not a suggestion. We're letting you know you're going to need to use that PoE injector. So the best practice is to put that injector as close to the camera as possible. I've seen installs where we have the PoE injector in use, but we put it 300 feet away in a data closet. I know it's not completely convenient, but you really want to find someplace close to the camera that you can plug that into and use that PoE injector for power and for data reasons, mostly obviously for power, especially, I mean, with all of them. But anytime you have a varifocal lens, infrared light, a pan, tilt, and zoom camera, one of our multi-sensor cameras, if that comes in the box, you have to use it. Otherwise, there will be issues down the road. This is one of the last things you can check, and we know it's not convenient at all. Because taking a camera down and bench testing it, obviously you got to get a ladder up there, sometimes a lift, you got to rip it down and make sure. But I have seen with my own eyes at job sites where we've tested a cable and the test comes back fine, and yet the camera's messed up. You see the camera going in and out, it's slow, dropping packets. I've begged customers at those exact sites, just change the end. And they say, well, everything's fine. I did the tester and it's coming back as everything's fine with the cable. I say, I know, let's just change the end on both sides and everything works. What we're suggesting, I can't explain why, by the way. What we're suggesting is take the camera down, get a 3-foot patch cable from your local distributor, plug it in right there in the server room. Make sure with that pre-made patch cable, you have the same issue. If you do have the same issue, one of the other things probably applies to it and or call tech support. If you don't have the same issue and everything's smooth right there, plug directly in, we know it's an issue with the cable run that the tester's not picking up. I know it may not make sense, but I've seen it myself. I've been on job sites. I promise you it's a thing. Please bench test your cameras because, again, tech support's going to ask you to do it anyway. You might as well do it before you call them and save us all some time. This is a big one. Are the cameras and the PoE switch connected to a UPS, an uninterruptible power supply, battery backup, especially the servers? Because inside the servers, we have a solid state hard drive for the operating system, but we're still relying, because we need to in the industry right now, solid states haven't caught up to what a regular spinning hard drive can do as far as rewritability and also lifespan if we were to use it that much. Now, those old school, granted, security level, top notch that digital Watchdog uses, hard drives are basically like a record. I mean, not exactly, but it's a little disk and it writes onto that disk. You lose power in the middle of that, you could corrupt and or destroy a hard drive. It's possible. It's actually part of our warranty at Digital Watchdog that you have to be plugged into a battery backup. So at the very least, you get 20 minutes. You could even program this to shut down the server right before the battery itself dies. But at least you get 20 minutes of battery life, of it being alive. And if it's a quick power outage like we typically get, then you'll be good to go. Another big tip, and I've seen this happen as well, so I got to say it, is that I've seen people use these battery backups and they're plugged into the surge only. You could see it in that picture right there, right there. The surge only side, which is not even a battery backup at that point. It's just a surge protector. You want battery and surge. You want the PoE switch for the cameras, and you want the server plugged into the battery and surge side. There are plenty of UPS companies out there. I used to rep one of them back in the day. You go to their website, they're going to have a calculator. They'll even have our part numbers in it. And you could say, I'm using these Digital Watchdog part numbers, this PoE switch. I want to get 20 minutes, an hour of battery backup. It'll let you know what part number to use. But this is huge. It voids the warranty if you don't use one of these battery backups. But on top of that, again, we don't want you to have to return to the job site unless you need to. This could be a reason to return, not only return, but have to return a unit because we didn't have it plugged in to a battery or surge. Essential. So this is what I was referring to before when we were talking about using the server as a client. Here's a quick way, even if you're not using it as a client, to make sure your CPU is okay. If you go into Spectrum and grab the server and drag it over like it's a camera, you'll see this screen. This is basically Task Manager in Windows, but right here in Spectrum. And you can even hover your mouse over CPU, over RAM to highlight what you're looking at. As you can see, our server right here is humming along. She's doing great. No issues at all. I mean, you could check everything else from what the hard drives are writing, as well as the actual throughput of the machine. But a quick glance, if you're having issues and you've checked all the other boxes, this is one more thing you could check before you call tech support. Is the machine itself okay? Is everything fine? Because if you see these numbers, again, that CPU and the RAM in the 80s or 90s, that could mean that you're either using it as a client and you shouldn't, or you've got too many cameras on it and she can't handle it anymore, or your settings are jacked all the way up. Maybe you're recording at 30 frames a second or more. Not more, you can do it on some of them. But you want to make sure that your machine is healthy. Nothing around 70, 80%, because that means you're going to need a new machine soon, or you got to lower your settings down. But make sure everything is fine. Make sure your machine is healthy. If you've checked all these things off your list, at that point, I would call tech support. Because at that point, you've checked everything that we're going to ask you in that first couple minutes of calling into tech support. You might as well just call us because there's something else going on. Could be a network issue. Who knows what it could be? It could be any number of things. Either way, Digital Watchdog Tech Support is here for you. You call 813-888-9555, option 4, and you'll be brought right to our tech support. If you're a channel partner of ours, you can even enter your number in there and you get pushed to the top of the queue, assuming you bought enough to rectify that. But call tech support. We're here for you. We will remote into the systems. We'll take over. We use TeamViewer to take over. It'll make your life that much easier. Our tech support is phenomenal. Jump in there. When you're done with tech support, also feel free to let your sales engineers know and your regional sales managers to Digital Watchdog know what happened. Give us the tickets. We can review those tickets, see everything tech support did, and we might have some tips and tricks for you as well. Either way, we have an entire support staff here for you. More of these videos on the way as well. But just know that tech support and Digital Watchdog is here for you. We covered a lot, and we covered in short time, 17 minutes, short-ish. I thought it was going to be shorter. But what did we learn today? We learned that Digital Watchdog is here for you. We learned that this world is never going to stop growing. It'll always grow. But so will we with you. We have a lot more content to get to. I'm going to go through that setting up a Blackjack server coming up next. Keep your eye out on the Digital Watchdog website. Check us out on YouTube. There's so much more to come. Until next time, my name is Scott Cappelletti, and this has been your Rapid Review.